I've spoken about how propaganda in the media is being used to combat the black pill mindset. I've spoken about how they perceive that black pill mindset to be a threat to their social privilege. Just like propaganda, advice can also be used in that same combative way. Typically, when normie men and women give advice to incels, they are attempting to manipulate incels into being silent about our involuntary celibacy. They are also trying to manipulate us into being silent about the real causes of it. Let this video serve as an example of why you should never take advice from normies. Especially from women.
Why am I in such a good mood? We're talking about incels. No reason. Yeah, totally. Incels are some of the people that have the most pain when it comes to sexuality, the most shame, the most darkness around sex and sexuality. So
there are some incels who are ashamed of how they look and others that are ashamed of how much they masturbate to porn. But those feelings of shame are usually evoked by normie men and women who profusely disparage incel men and discriminate against us. Then bitches like this trick those shame-ridden incels into believing that it's all their fault. Those of us incels that are immune to normie shaming tactics tend to tell the truth about who's really at fault. Then after we tell the truth, we tend to get censored.
I thought I'd talk to you about my thoughts on incels and how to not be an incel anymore. Like how to go from being an incel to a sex god. So make sure you watch all the way to the end of this video because every tip is important. I wrote them in the exact order that they need to be applied in. There's a couple that you can switch around, but for the most part, start to finish, watch the whole video. If you're not interested in being an incel, if you want to be a voluntary sex machine that's getting laid, then thank you for joining. Welcome. I'm Caitlin V. I am a sex and relationship coach. I specialize in working with men who have performance anxiety.
Oh, okay. So basically, she's a fraudulent and manipulative shyster who's made a career out of lying to men.
And there's a lot of overlap between incels and men with performance anxiety.
No, there's not. There's a lot of overlap between incels and women being unethical scumbags. The typical woman bases a man's level of attractiveness on how tall he is, how masculine and well proportioned his face is, his body fat percentage, how much money he has, and how expansive his social network is. The typical woman is completely and belligerently unwilling to have sex with any man that she is not attracted to. Now what does that have to do with nervousness or social anxiety on the part of incels? Absolutely nothing. Attractive men are largely simps who are willing to have sex with women that they are unattracted to. That gives unattractive women the option to have sex with attractive men. Which is why unattractive women reject unattractive men and almost exclusively fuck attractive men. Unlike unattractive women, unattractive men cannot go above their level. Since unattractive women can and do go above their level, unattractive men are left with nothing. What does that have to do with nervousness and anxiety on the part of incels? Absolutely nothing.
And so, without further ado, let's get going. Couple things we've got to define. First, number one, what's an incel? You might be asking yourself right now. An incel is a person who is involuntarily celibate. Now, this term originally comes from a female person who was involuntarily celibate who started a website about her celibacy. So celibacy means not having sex, involuntary means not by choice. And this woman was not having sex, but not by choice. She would have chosen to be having sex. It was started on a website that became a sort of forum and online community space for people who identified as involuntary celibates. But it was more of like a support group. It wasn't until the 20-teens that the term and the identifier incel started to be associated with violence, a couple mass murders, violence against women in particular, and that skyrocketed the term incel into wide recognition and like a lot of media coverage.
So in other words, the general public never gave a shit about unattractive men being socially ostracized until a tiny portion of incel men snapped and committed murder. That's what it took to draw attention to the issue. I find that to be more tragic than the murders.
Since then, there's been some online kerfuffles around groups of people identifying themselves as incels, including having their subreddit on the website reddit.com shut down after it was seen to be, and this is my understanding, I was not obviously a part of that decision, it seemed to be promoting violence against women, aggressive and violent sexual assault, even rape, even going so far as to recommend or support rape of women.
On reddit.com, most of the posts that I've seen where incels spoke on rape, they did so in a hypothetical way or a philosophical way. Others made comparisons to point out how fucked up inceldom is. Like making comparisons between women depriving men of sex and men raping women. But I didn't see them make any threats. And I didn't see too many of them explicitly telling men to go rape women. There also appears to be some men go their own way reddit.com users, who say things that piss normies off. Then eventually, the normie idiots call those men go their own way users, incels. They typically do that without any proof that they actually are incels. Based on the post that I used to see on incel.me, it was extremely rare for men to incite violence against women on there. Just like it is extremely rare for men to incite violence against women on incel.net. Also, I know for a fact that men don't have to incite violence against women to get censored. Meanwhile, women can say shit like this, without getting censored.
As a way of, I don't know, accessing sex for the people on the thread.
So even if a minority of incel men are inciting violence against women on forums, so what? If women are allowed to say whatever hateful shit that they want about men that they deem unattractive, then men should be able to freely express how they feel about women.
I am of the really strong belief that most people who identify as incels don't really hate women. They've just been led down this path where they blame women for their lack of sex in their life. And that's not like a one-to-one correlation. I'll get into that when I start talking about how not to be an incel anymore. But
how dare we blame women for something that's women's fault?
I really firmly believe that only people who are hurting hurt other people.
Really? Women hurt incels by disparaging us, denying us sex and denying us the opportunity to reproduce. Yet women get their sexual needs met and are able to reproduce. Even women who are ugly, poor, socially awkward, or all of those things at the same time. So how the fuck are women hurting?
And so it's really important for me to get this message out there. It's really important for you to receive it. If you're not having sex or you're not having the sex that you want to be having, I want you to know that there is a path forward. Like, there's something that can be done about that. You're not hopeless. Like, duh.
Having sexual intercourse requires acceptance from other people. A person's ability to gain the acceptance of other people depends on whether or not those other people are willing to accept that person. Duh.
Here's something that I really firmly believe is that we can't hate anyone unless we hate part of ourselves. So if you find yourself in the position where you feel like you're hating people, the answer is not to focus on those people, it's to focus on the part of you that hates a part of you. So for incels, it could be that you hate the part of you that like even wants to have sex. The part of you that feels like they need to have sex. Like you might feel resentful that sex even has power over you at all. Or it could be that you hate the part of you that doesn't know how to have it. The part of you that like fears rejection or fears failure. The part of you that doesn't really want to try, like wants sex to just be easy. And like, damn it, it's something that my body needs. Like, why should I have to work hard to do it?
Well, yeah, why should I have to work hard to get sex? Good-looking men don't have to. Bitches certainly don't have to. But I don't hate myself for thinking that way. Because it's not my fault that women are shallow assholes.
Or there's a part of you that hates the men that have told you over and over and over again that in order to be a man and to have status as a man, that you must have sex. You must have a lot of sex. You must have sex with the right women, which are usually skinny, white, big tits, like you name it, right?
Black women have no problem getting dick. Despite having a higher obesity rate than any other kind of people in the country. Despite having a higher STD rate than any other kind of people in the country. Despite the fact that most of them wear fake hair. With that being said, on dating sites, it's actually Asian women that are desired more than any other type of women. Even though they are more likely to have small breast and flat asses than white women and black women. Yet normie men and bitches claim that men are just as shallow as women.
They need to be the right kind of women, and you have to have sex with them, and you have to have sex with them often and sometimes casually or whatever in order to prove yourself and your status as a man. And so I don't think that a lot of the hate that incels feel is actually about women, although a lot of the violence that has come as a result of that hate has been against women, right? Women are not the problem. A society that treats men like they're only worth the number of women that they sleep with is a problem. A society that treats women like they're only sex objects for men's status is a problem.
A society that treats women like they're only sex objects for men's status? Oh, so that's what all of the male-produced female empowerment movies are about? That's what the over $1 trillion worth of female-held student loan debt is about? There are some jobs that are female-dominated and most of those jobs pay good money. So she can miss me with that feminist propaganda bullshit. This is no longer a society where women are commonly treated like they're only sex objects for men's status. This is a society where women sexually objectify themselves to outshine other women, get what they want from men and gain resources.
And a society that tells both men and women that sex is wrong, dirty, shameful, that pleasure is unnatural, or that we should feel bad for wanting to have sex. And if
That's obviously false. Look at all of the sexual hookup apps that are used. Plus America has 50 states yet contains hundreds of adult store businesses. Not to mention the fact that sex and sexuality is rampantly glorified and promoted in pretty much every imaginable form of entertainment in the world.
we do have sex, we should not talk about it. We should do it in the way that is prescribed in porn. We should do that only in marriage. We should do that. Like, a society that has all of these rules and prescriptions around sex, but doesn't have any sex positivity itself, that's the problem. And that is a problem that we're not going to solve on this channel today. But there are some problems that we actually can solve, okay? The first problem that I want to address is that no one is entitled to sex. All human beings and many creatures and animals in the world out there reproduce sexually. We have a biological drive to have sex because that's how our DNA gets to get transferred from one generation to the other. And all you really are is a product of your DNA, right? Okay, good. Now that we have that out of the way, no one is entitled to have intercourse with other people. Just the same way that you're not entitled to drive, you know, like there's no right to drive a car. Driving a car is a privilege. Having sexual intercourse with other people is a privilege.
Cars are not necessary for the survival of a species. Sexual intercourse is. Cars are not inherently beneficial to people's health. Sexual intercourse is. Cars are technology. Sexual intercourse is nature. The differences are substantial and obvious. So that was a pretty poorly thought out example that she gave. Furthermore, if most American adults get the so-called privilege of driving a car, yet some adults are denied the right or opportunity to buy and drive a car, then that still qualifies as unfairness. It means that people are arbitrarily picking and choosing who gets that privilege and who doesn't. Or picking and choosing based on bigotry-based prejudices. I'm pretty sure that if the idiot that I'm responding to was restricted from buying cars because of the way her face looks and her height, she would have a problem with that.
Just because your body wants it, and I believe your body needs to have sexual release, doesn't mean that having intercourse with other people is a human right that you are somehow entitled to.
So she said that the human body needs sexual release, then said that sex is not a human right that we are somehow entitled to. One contradicts the other.
Now, I'm not saying this to make you feel bad. I'm not even saying this because I don't want you to somehow proclaim the desire and like hold strongly to your right to have sex. Like, you have a right to have sex, but you don't have a specific right to intercourse, and you definitely don't have a right to intercourse with any particular woman. Like, you have a right to have sex with yourself. You have, I believe, a right to seek sex, but you do not have a right to have sexual intercourse. I think that's a really, really important distinction. Having sexual intercourse, no matter who you are, is a privilege. It requires other people to be on board, unless you're having solo sex, which I think is an actually totally valid form of sex that we're going to get to in just a minute.
Masturbation is a psychological fixation. But it's not real sex. Which is why it can't produce a child. Plus, masturbation is more likely to cause penile fracture than sexual intercourse is. And masturbation is also far more likely to cause energy loss due to the fact that masturbation does not produce oxytocin like sexual intercourse does. Unlike masturbation, sexual intercourse is physiologically healthy. Because sexual intercourse is sex. Masturbation is a psychological fixation.
I believe that all people are entitled to clean water, a safe bed to sleep in at night, healthy, nutritious food, even access to health care.
At 7 minutes and 28 seconds into the video, she said that she thinks sexual release is something that your body needs. Later in the video, she said that she believes that people are entitled to other things that they need. So do people have a human right to have things that they need or not? Part of me wishes that these anti-incel people would stop cherry-picking when it comes to how they apply their moral standards. Another part of me is glad that they do, because that makes it easier for us to see how full of shit they are.
But there are plenty of places on planet Earth where people don't agree with that, and there's even more places where people don't have access to all of those things. And I'm not here to debate whether or not that's fair or right. All I'm here to say is that just the same way that we're not necessarily guaranteed to have clean drinking water, we're also not guaranteed to have access to intercourse with other people.
Okay, but not being guaranteed to have something and not being entitled to something is two different things. Just because you are not guaranteed to get something that you are entitled to, does not change the moral fact that you are entitled to it.
It doesn't permit us to enact violence or do anything that is against the will or violates the autonomy of another person's body. Just the same way that it's not okay to steal food from somebody else, it's not okay to steal sex from somebody else.
So it would be okay to create oppressive conditions that keep people from getting food and therefore leads to them starving to death? But it would not be okay for people to counter the wrongdoings of their oppressors by taking from their oppressors in order to feed themselves and their families. She has a very selective and warped sense of right and wrong. Do I feel sorry for any women that get raped? No. But do I think that it's morally okay to rape people? No. I do, however, think that it's morally wrong to deny people sex based on shallow prejudices. And I should have the right to freely express that without having my account terminated by simps and bitches. I should have the right to express my contempt for the people who discriminate against me without getting my accounts terminated by simps and bitches. Every incel should have those rights. I also believe that attractive men should start collectively treating unattractive women like shit, just like women do to unattractive men. I believe that unattractive men should be treated just as good as unattractive women are, or unattractive women should be treated just as badly as unattractive men are. Either one works. But normies need to stop acting like most incels are, making the argument that raping women is morally okay. Actually, some women seem to think that raping women is morally okay. As long as it's attractive men doing the raping.
Okay, I hope I've belabored that point enough and that you're still with me. Now, just because not everyone is entitled to sex doesn't mean that not everyone can have sex. I really firmly believe that barring any sort of like physical reason that you can't have sex, like you're physically unable to, you're like locked away in solitary confinement, but basically everyone else can have sex. And there's a path for you to achieve sex. There's a path for you to achieve sexual intercourse, and I'm going to lay it out for you step by step starting right now. So this is Caitlin's guide to no longer being involuntary celibate. Here we go. Step number 1, quit identifying as an incel. It's like identifying as a loser or identifying as a sick person. If you identify that way, you're going to be that way. If you identify strongly with I am an incel, I am involuntarily celibate, every time you say that, think that, type that, you're underlining it, scoring it, scratching it into your brain. You're not an incel any more than you are a giraffe. Like, you identifying as it, though, will cement that into your brain as who you are.
Being involuntarily celibate is a social condition and a circumstance. Therefore, being involuntarily celibate is not something that you identify as, it is something that you are, or are not. An incel does not have to acknowledge that they are involuntarily celibate, in order for them to be involuntarily celibate. And no, involuntary celibacy is not comparable to being sick. Mental and physical illnesses are health problems. Being an incel is not a health problem in itself. It is a social condition that is caused by severe societal prejudice and discrimination.
So for example, it's like if I identify as a sick person instead of a person who is trying to get healthy, I'm guaranteed to stay a sick person. If I identify as a loser and I introduce myself as a loser and I expect other people to treat me as a loser, I am a loser.
Recovering from a sickness does not require people to accept you. Getting pussy does require people to accept you. Having a cold and being socially discriminated against are two very different problems. If a man identifies as an incel, he is simply acknowledging his circumstance. To accuse him of calling himself a loser is to assume that he is to blame for being involuntarily celibate, or that he blames himself for being involuntarily celibate. I call myself an incel because by definition I am one. But I don't blame myself for most women being bigoted, sociopaths who only have sex with men that they find attractive. I acknowledge that women are to blame for my involuntary celibacy. So I don't blame myself. The notion that a man's personality is a significant factor as to whether or not women will give him sex has already been disproved. So why would I blame myself? I put the blame where it belongs. Like I said before, an incel is not a loser. An incel is a victim.
You get to keep all of the shitty identities that you want to have. And you definitely get to keep them if you are willing to go to bat for them. So if you want to defend your right to be an incel, you get to keep being an incel.
It's not about defending my right to be an incel. It's about acknowledging facts and the truth. Which is something that the dingbat that I'm responding to consistently neglected to do in her incel video.
And if you're ready to be a sexual person who's having sexual intercourse, you need to start identifying as someone who has sexual intercourse. You don't have to have sexual intercourse in order to start identifying that way. That's not how that works. You identify that way and then you become it.
So basically, lie to yourself and to other people by saying that you're something that you're not. Then the lie will become a reality? No, that is not the way it works.
If you want to start running, it's helpful to identify as someone who runs. If you identify as someone who's a lazy slob who doesn't run, and then you expect yourself to go hit the treadmill, your brain's going to go, no, this doesn't work because I don't identify with this. That's not who I am. But if you identify as someone who works out or someone who runs, it makes a lot of sense to get on the treadmill because that's part of your identity.
If you want to be someone who uses a treadmill, wouldn't it make more sense to acknowledge that you currently aren't someone who uses a treadmill? Shouldn't you do that first, so that way you can take corrective action and start using a treadmill? The first step to solving a problem is acknowledging the problem. So that was also a pretty poorly thought out example. It's also an example that doesn't even apply to incels. Because it's not us that need to take corrective action. It's the people who discriminate against us who need to take corrective action. But most of them won't because they are evil scum. Others won't because they are being manipulated by morons like her.
So if you identify as someone who has sex, it would make sense for you to do the things that are required for you to have sex. If you identify as a celibate person, you're going to stay a celibate person, because anything that you do that moves you in the direction of having sex, your brain's going to go, no, that doesn't line up. My identity is this, and that's the step number 2. Take responsibility. Snatch responsibility straight up out of the air and own it. You are responsible for your sex life. If you blame other people, if you blame women, even if you blame the men who bullied you into thinking that you were a beta and you couldn't get laid, if you blame other people, nothing changes. Feel free to blame other people all you want. If you're cool with nothing ever changing and you just want to stay exactly where you're at, you can keep blaming other people. But if you want to change anything, you have to take ownership over that thing.
Take responsibility. Take responsibility for what? If an incel flirts with women, how is he responsible for those women choosing to turn him down for sex because his height or other superficial prejudices that they have? Incels are not responsible for the choices that women make. Incels don't hypnotize women into being ignorant assholes. Women choose to be ignorant assholes. So regardless of whether or not our circumstances change, we have nothing to take responsibility for.
So if you want to change the celibacy, then you need to take 100% responsibility for the way that your sex life is right now. And equally important, you have to take responsibility and ownership of the sex life that you are trying to create for yourself. No one is going to take responsibility for you. You can assign blame, but you can't assign responsibility. It's on you and only you. And thank goodness. This means you need to not wait another minute. You don't have to wait until a woman comes along and bestows sex upon you to take responsibility for this. You can do it right now. You can choose to do it. Choose to do it right now. Ready? Go. Oh, there you go. Boom. Responsible. Doesn't that feel good? Now it's in your hands.
Furthermore, at 8 minutes and 13 seconds into the video, she said that sexual intercourse requires other people to be on board. So if that's true, then logically speaking, how am I the only person that is responsible for whether or not I'm getting sex? If sexual intercourse requires the involvement of other individuals, then doesn't that mean that other individuals are also responsible for whether or not I'm getting sex? And for the record, if a person's actions cause problems for other people, then that person is to blame for those problems. That is not an opinion, that is a fact. Part of taking responsibility is taking responsibility for how your behavior affects the lives of other people. Morally speaking, people are responsible for solving problems that they cause. The best way to avoid justifiably getting blamed for doing bad things is to refrain from doing bad things.
Now that you have stopped identifying as an incel and started taking responsibility for your sex life, the real magic begins. Step 3, become someone who women want to have sex with. Now, I can feel your fingers getting ready to type into the comments. Caitlin, you're always telling men what to do and you never say anything about how women are not perfect. This is an advice channel for men. This video is for men. No one is perfect. I never said that anyone was perfect. You need to become someone who women want to have sex with. I'm not going to sugarcoat this for you. You're a big guy. You're an adult man. You're capable of hearing this. Women don't care how much money you make or the kind of car that you drive.
No. That wasn't just your imagination. I heard it too. That dumb blonde really said that shit.
He put them low profiles on my car. He treat me to a petty plus manicure. Anything that I ask for from my sponsor, he go and bye. A baby blue medallion I just got. My feet they speak Italian, walk so high. I told you baby thanks a lot. My sponsor, he go and bye. He ain't no square, he just like to share. In love with a tip of throwing hundreds in the air. Throw some over here. And Louis drop the Louis in my lap. And all my ladies say, the go girls say, hey, say hey, to fill up a drink for me, to fill up a tank for me, to put something in the bank for me, myself a sponsor.
small experiment reveals just how directly social and financial status can change a woman's perception of a man. Photographs were taken of the men from the mate pairing experiments wearing normal clothes. Each man was assigned a fake job. Some worked retail, others became high-flying music executives. The pictures were then shown to random women on the street. Based on his physical attractiveness, this man got a 4 out of 10 in the lab test. But give him an annual income of $245,000 and a high-status job.
I would say maybe an 8.
Okay, 7.
I'd probably do 6 or 7 because of money.
This guy got a 9 in the lab, but now with a 23 grand a year paycheck from an office supply store, he experienced a serious loss of sex appeal.
A 5. 4.
And this guy, who ranked lowest of all the men in the lab, got a boost from his imaginary 6-figure software business.
A 10.
Those are not at all important for you to become someone that women want to have sex with. In order for you to be someone that women want to have sex with, you have to actually care enough about yourself to treat yourself as if you are worthy of getting laid. For example, the basic hygiene. Do you shower? Do you shave? Do you regularly groom? Do you go get your hair done every couple weeks? Just buzz it, trim it, get it like cut tight. Have someone else take care of these things for you. You don't have to be an expert in these things. That lets me know that you actually care about the way that you're being perceived by other people.
Oh Christ, here we go with the take a shower shit. Is there any studies, footage, or anything else that suggests that physically unattractive men shower less than everyone else? If anyone who is watching this video has the proof that I'm asking about, show it. And if women care so much about how well groomed a man's hair is, then how come men like this can get pussy?
Interesting and interested. Have hobbies, read books, know things that fascinate other people. It's not rocket science. And then finally, learn the skills of charisma, charm, flirtation, seduction, and sex.
And more than once, you know, a circa like 5'4", 300-pound dude hitting on me, which, like, you know, looks aren't everything. And I applaud your confidence, buddy. But really, come on.
Confidence is a myth. If women don't find you attractive as a man, they are not going to fuck with you. Your level of confidence has nothing to do with it. I don't see why men can't understand this.
I'm quite sure that all of the incels that have been scammed by pickup artists have tried virtually every charisma-based technique known to man. Yet they're still incels, aren't they? A more realistic notion is that charisma can only matter if a woman is already physically attracted to a man. I strongly doubt that a person can be persuaded into being sexually attracted to another person. And of course, most women only have sex with men that they are physically attracted to. Others have sex with men that they can monetarily leech off of. Also, if women dislike and reject men based on looks, then most of them are not going to take the time to learn what kind of hobbies that unattractive men have. Women that actually do choose to talk to you enough to learn about your hobbies and interest, won't give you sex. Being interested in someone's hobbies does not equate to sexual attraction or being willing to have sex with someone that you aren't attracted to. A man can be interested in the hobbies of another man. A woman can be interested in the hobbies of another woman. You being interested in what someone does for fun, doesn't mean that you will want to fuck that person. Even in the unlikely event that a woman does take the time to find out what hobbies and interests that an unattractive man has, she will just friend zone him at best.
If you are not willing to learn how to have sex, then why would anyone want to have sex with you? If you're not willing to learn how to cook, don't invite people over for dinner.
Okay, first of all, what incel has ever said or even suggested that they are not willing to learn how to have sex? I mean, I would think if an incel flirts with women with the intention of getting into their pants, that right there, would strongly suggest that he is open to learning how to have sex. But how is someone going to learn how to be good at having sex when everyone refuses to have sex with them? People say that, the best way to learn is from experience. So if we don't get the experience of having sex with women, then what do we have to learn from?
Ask yourself, why would someone want to have sex with me? And then answer the question. I care about myself, I am interesting, and I have interests, and I am technically skilled or at least curious enough to learn how to be a great lover. Voila! It's actually way more simple than you might make it out to be, and you don't need to own a Bugatti or a Italian leather suit. Understand that there is a lid for every jar. Your interests are valid. There are women that are going to be interested in them. Cultivate them. Be willing to talk about them. Learn how to talk about them.
Do you think that all attractive men who are sexually active have interesting hobbies? Do you think that all or even most sexually active women have interesting hobbies? Actually, if you are an unattractive man who happens to have interesting hobbies, some women will accuse you of overcompensating for your lack of attractiveness.
All right, now that you are someone who people will want to have sex with, now you get to put yourself out there. If you're wondering why you're not getting laid, but all you ever do is sit in the basement waiting for somebody to just like knock on the door and say, hey, I'm here to have sex with you, well, it's not gonna happen.
Why not? That's basically what tends to happen for bitches. Regardless of how they look or how much money that they have. Yes, there are some women who flirt with men. But unlike men, women only flirt with people that they are physically and financially attracted to. Let's be clear, there are unattractive men that have described flirting with hundreds of women and being turned down each time.
You actually have to make yourself available, let those people know that you are interested. So there's lots of different ways you could do that. You can meet people through online meetup groups, leagues, in-person events, sports teams, whatever. You can do the bar and the nightclub thing, but sometimes that's really intimidating, and that's certainly not the only way to meet people. You can online date. Online dating is great for shy guys because then at least you know that the person that you're meeting up with is interested in you. Understand that all of these are numbers games, and I'll get back to that in just a second. The point is that in order for people to know that you're available, you are the only person who can possibly tell them. So tell them. But wait, I can hear you saying it already, and that's why the next step is to be willing to fail. To fail and to get rejected and to fall flat on your face. These are natural consequences of the game. Just the same way that when you apply for jobs, you might get rejected for jobs. You're not the perfect fit for every job, and you're not the perfect sexual partner for every woman.
So according to her, you have to be perfect for jobs and women? At 13 minutes and 32 seconds of the video, she herself said that no one is perfect. So are people really expected to be a perfect fit for jobs and sex partners? I'll just disregard her use of the word perfect. There's a difference between not being an ideal candidate for every job, and not being an ideal candidate for any job, or not being an ideal candidate for the vast majority of jobs that you apply for. There is a difference between not being an acceptable sex partner for every woman and not being an acceptable sex partner for any woman. You want to know what really is a numbers game? Success rate. It's lazy and ignorant to simply dismiss someone's complaints by making the everyone experiences rejection argument. Because it leads to people making false equivalencies. If an attracted man flirts with 100 women and is rejected by 30 of them, then he was accepted by 70% of them. Which is the good majority of them. If an unattractive man flirts with 100 women and is rejected by all 100 of them, then his success rate is 0. So to compare the attractive man's circumstances to the unattractive man's circumstances, is a false equivalency. And it's fucking stupid. People who make such comparisons clearly aren't trying to help us. I say that because many of the people who criticize incels do so under the guise of trying to help us. But you don't do people any favors by lying to them.
That would be statistically impossible. It's just not true. It's a good thing, actually. Think about it in the sense of you don't want to have sex with every single person. You want to have sex with a person who really, really passionately wants to have sex with you. And in order to find that person, you're going to have to sift through or swipe through or talk to a lot of women who are going to reject you. Your brain understands that rejection is pain. And that's because of the way that we evolved. If you practice getting rejected and recognizing that it doesn't kill you, eventually your brain learns that being rejected doesn't kill you. It's never going to feel good to feel rejected, but it's not life or death. Like, even if you're watching this and you're like, I've been rejected 1,000 times, you're still watching this, right? You are still alive, and therefore you can go back out and try getting rejected again. It's the only way to succeed is to fail. There's no other option. Nothing great happens within your comfort zone. Nothing awesome ever happened without risking failure.
But anyway, when women reject unattractive men, they tend to do it in ways that are belligerent and demeaning. I can attest to that because I have first-hand experience going through it. The first time that I flirted, I did so in a respectful manner. I didn't comment on the woman's looks. Me and her were around the same age, we were both adults, and after making small talk, I asked to hang out with her in the lounge area of the educational facility that we were attending. It was a lounge area that was under camera surveillance. It is a facility that closes at 5:00 p.m. It wasn't like I was asking to hang out with her late at night in a graveyard or some shit. So spare me that bullshit about nice guys being creepy. If you are a man that women find unattractive, then damn near anything that you do is creepy as far as women are concerned. Anyway, she rejected me, of course. But when she did it, she looked me up and down and said, "Boy, get your dirty ass out of my face." She said it loud enough for other people to hear it, and most of those people laughed. She could have simply said that she wasn't interested in me. But instead she chose to insult and humiliate me. And before that day I would say hello to her sometimes, but beyond that I had not spoken to her. So this wasn't a case of me constantly trying to talk my way into her pants. I only flirted with her that one fucking time. So if she didn't want anything to do with me, then she could have been a mature adult and let me know that in a respectful manner. But when I got rejected in that way, I felt sad, angry, and embarrassed. I was more mad at myself than I was at her. I was mad that I even chose to flirt with her in the first place. The emotional pain that I felt from that was worse than most physical pain that I felt. I can't imagine subjecting myself to that kind of emotional abuse hundreds or even dozens of times. I'd rather put out a lit cigarette with my scrotum than continuously give bitches the satisfaction of humiliating me. And I think that it's really fucked up for people to try and manipulate incel men into not giving up. Based on what women find attractive and what attributes a man has, a man doesn't have to flirt with a large number of women to know that his odds of getting laid are extremely slim. If a man doesn't measure up to the superficial standards that women collectively have, then he likely will not ever get sex from women. Continuously trying to do so will only lead to him wasting time and money. Because most dating sites and hookup apps are not free. Neither are most of these dating coach scammers. Simple as that. So if an incel chooses to stop trying to get sex from women, it does not take away from his status of being a victim, nor does it invalidate his feelings about the issue.
And if you're thinking right now, listen, Caitlin, I would, but I am only attracted to 10s. I'm only attracted to women that are like a perfect 10, and all they ever do is reject me because I'm not a 10, I'm like a 6. Get over yourself. That is a belief that I firmly believe men hold to keep themselves safe from actually meeting women. Because you don't actually only want to date 10s. That's not your true self, right? That's something that you've built up, I think, likely to protect yourself from being rejected. Because if you only are attracted to 10s and so you can't approach them because you're not a 10, then that keeps you safe from actually having to approach real women, and most real women are not 10s. Does that make sense? Like, you're not fooling me. okay?
What incels are saying that they only want to fuck women who are 10s. That's not in our heads, it's in her head. Dating up is not an option for unattractive men. It's an option for unattractive women. Most incels know that.
If you're a 6, meet 6s. Stop putting people on a stupid scale to begin with. Numbers are meaningless here. But don't think that you're going to stay safe by putting up a cloud of, no, I can't. I'm just not attracted to anyone who's not perfect. Perfection is a lie, and it's boring, and it's a way to keep yourself safe from being hurt. And I hear you on that, and so let's just move on, because you're not going to do that anymore, right? Our last step to stop being an incel is to love yourself. And I mean it literally. Make love to yourself. Self-pleasure, masturbate. Number 2, stop expecting someone to have sex with you when you're not willing to have sex with yourself. Have sex with yourself. And by this, I don't mean like jerk off. I mean have sex with yourself. Anybody can jerk off. Anybody can, it's boring, okay? Make love to yourself. Be good to yourself. And then when a woman comes along, she will feel that. She can sense that about you, that you are someone who makes love and you are someone who is deserving of being made love to. It's a very, 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 very simple practice. And I'm going to give you a real vulnerable example right here and right now. How do I know that this works? Well, there was a period of my life where I was involuntarily celibate. So I was fresh out of college and I was having a hard time having sex. I could not, for the life of me, get laid. I was going on dates and there either was absolutely zero sexual chemistry.
Absolutely zero sexual chemistry. Translation: she wasn't physically attracted to them.
Or there was sexual chemistry and I would be upfront with the guy and say like, hey, you want to come back to my place? And he wouldn't do it. It was so frustrating. Number 1, you're not alone. Number 2, women experience this too.
As I pointed out before, women are not held to enough standards for them to be incels. Which is why inceldom is almost exclusively a male problem.
So I went through this. It was extremely frustrating. I even once got a guy all the way back to my apartment only for him to go, no, I just, I really respect you. And so I want to cuddle. I was like, you can get out of here, bro. I came here to get laid.
That lying ass slut. If anything, she's probably the one who did that to him. That sounds like shit that a woman would do. When have you ever heard of a heterosexual man going to a bitch's place and wanting to cuddle with her after she expresses that she wants to have sex with him? Don't worry, I'll wait.
You can see I went through my own stuff. I'm not telling you anything that I didn't go through and heal for myself. But what I started doing after this rash, like months of celibacy, is I started really making love to myself. I invested in some great toys. I would put time aside, like Saturday mornings were just me time. I would take a bath. I would give myself orgasms. I treated myself like I actually loved myself. And you know what? I ended up attracting a lot of men as a result of doing that.
So let me get this straight. Men were not pressed about having sex with her at first. So she started taking baths and fucking herself with sex toys. And that somehow led to men wanting to have sex with her. How did those men even know that she was sticking objects into her coochie? Did those guys have telepathy or something? Or was she going around telling people that she fucks herself and men somehow thought that made her more attractive? Does she really think that we are dumb enough to believe this stupid shit?
The less that I cared, the less desperate that I was, which, by the way, desperation turns people off, both men and women. They can smell it from a mile away.
If desperation has anything to do with being rejected, then how come incels get rejected numerous times before becoming desperate? After all, a desire to have something and constantly failing to get it is what causes the desperation in the first place. Right?
The less desperate I was, the more deserving of sex I became, the more attention people gave me, the more people wanted to have sex. with me. And within maybe 8 months, I was actually turning people down that wanted to take me out, like that wanted to go on dates with me, that wanted to explore with me, that like there was a lot of chemistry there. Actually, there was a lot of chemistry there. Actually, looking back on it, yeah, I was attracting even strangers. Like I would go to the mall and people would be like, hey, what's up? This after months of me not being able to get laid.
She supposedly went through months of involuntary celibacy. And she has the nerve to compare that to people who have been involuntarily celibate for years and have always been involuntarily celibate.
I was getting hit on everywhere that I went, and the only thing that I changed is I started treating myself like I deserved my own sexual attention, stopped trying to get it from other people, and that attracted them to me.
Wait, stop trying to get it from other people? Do we make ourselves available and let women know that we are interested in them, or do we stop trying to get sexual attention from other people?
You actually have to make yourself available, let those people know that you are interested. As I started treating myself like I deserved my own sexual attention, stopped trying to get it from other people, and that attracted them to me. You actually have to make yourself available, let those people know that you are interested. So as I started treating myself like I deserved my own sexual attention, stopped trying to get it from other people, and you actually have to make yourself available, let those people know that you are interested. Stop trying to get it from other people, and that attracted them to me. So if you're tired of identifying as an incel, stop identifying as one. Stop getting support from other people that feel hopeless, and start recognizing that there actually is a path forward for you, but it's a path that you have to risk failing in order to walk. And also know that you're not alone, and this is not a permanent condition. There's plenty of help and there's plenty of hope out there.
Good Lord, that dim-witted broad is annoying. My overall point is that it is pointless to turn to women for constructive advice about escaping inceldom. Women hate it when people acknowledge that they are collectively shallow and selfish because they don't want anything to change. Women don't want people to pressure them into changing how they behave. America is a social climate where women are held to lower standards than men in most aspects of society. That gives women privilege. They don't want that to change. They benefit from the way things are. That's why whenever people point out the actual causes of inceldom, women get all defensive and make a bunch of dumb-ass deflective arguments. Even women who don't have a hostile disposition when addressing incels, are still full of shit. They pretend that they want to help us. But the claims that they make about inceldom and what causes inceldom, do not align with reality. Neither do their solutions for how to fix the problem. That makes it clear that those women are not trying to help us. They are trying to manipulate incels into being silent and being accepting of how we are treated in society. Incel brethren, I strongly advise you not to listen to the advice of Caitlin V and bitches like her. Normie men and women keep telling us to stop bitching. They say that over and over again like retarded parrots. Well, I will not be quiet about the prejudices and discrimination that cause hardship for me and people like me. I will not irrationally blame myself for my status of being an incel. I will not be fooled by the manipulation tactics of women and normie men. Will you?